Well, thank you, Ibrahim Bello Gunda, for the background report there. And we already have our guest in the studio seated for the conversation this morning. And we have Dr. Yahuza Getso, Security Intelligence and Investigation Expert, CEO Director, Forest Criminality Intelligence Center for Security Intelligence Research and Community-Driven Development, Abuja, Managing Director, Eagle Integrated Security and Logistics Company Limited. It's joining us from our Katsina studio. Our guest in the studio is Wing Commander Musa Salmanu, retired development, peace, and security experts. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right.
All right. Of course, earlier on, Demola introduced Dr. Yahuza Getso. I hope that he will be able to join us very soon. We are also expecting Dr. Nasiru Moazu Danmusa. All right, there is Dr. Yahuza Getso. Dr. Getso, thank you very much for joining us, and we're glad that you could make it. Quickly, let's take off with you. The two-day summit is holding in Katsina, and from the visuals we saw, the clips we saw in our background report, almost all the who is who was at that opening ceremony. I saw the former President Muhammad Buhari. Of course, the Vice President was there. Members of the legislature, state governors from the Northwest Zone, all of them were attended that opening ceremony. Now, does this give a stamp of validity, a stamp of confidence in this two-day summit?
Dr. Yahuza Getso, Managing Director, Eagles Integrated Security and Logistics Company Limited, Abuja, Security Intelligence and Investigation Expert, Community-Driven Development Professional.
Dr. Getso, thank you. We already read your resume out. In fact, we did. Demola did read much more. But I was asking, given the array of dignitaries, including former President Muhammadu Buhari, members of the legislature, all governors from the Northwest zones, and very, very prominent personalities attended the opening ceremony. And I'm saying, does that give some kind of stamp of authority, stamp of confidence on this summit?
Seems to be maybe communication gap there. So let's just come to the studio where we have Wing Commander Musa Salmanu, retired. Let's just look at briefly about the security summit going on in the north, in Katsina in particular. What is your thought about it?
Well, thank you so much. My thoughts are the fact that we have that's the diverse audience, if I could put it that. You have both the executive this time around, the legislature, and the other stakeholders. I saw the military, all other security agencies are being represented, seated in one room, deliberating and talking about the same thing at the same time. Gives some kind of hope and confidence that perhaps for a long time we've been talking in kind of silos, because this is not the first time I can say that governors, especially governors of northern which it started with the Northern Governors Forum and so on. They, like the Sultan said, this is about the third or so time that the Northern Governors Forum, as a body, have been talking about the issues of security. And I think it's more than even that if you go back in history and so on. But for the fact that they are widening this, getting everybody involved, and is being convened to talk about these issues, perhaps more openly, and frankly to one another, and trying to look at what are the solutions beyond kinetic means. I mean, that's in addition to that, also looking at so many other, or broadening the conversation and bringing in more stakeholders and bringing it to the root where it is, to the people, where it's most affected. Because the truth is that when it comes to security, like in so many other things, the solution is actually to the people, with the people closest to it. Solutions are not most of the time imposed from without. It's usually ideas that come from within, but that are given very deliberate consideration, thought through, and then implemented by everyone. So if what we are seeing is that time that everyone is saying we have to get everybody on the table, discuss this frankly and come up with solutions, then for me it's a good start, it's a good sign, and I hope that this, at the end of the day, at the end of the deliberations, very deliberate actions or steps would be out on how to end the issues of security in the Northwest.
Just like she said, just like the question she asked, with the array of personalities involved now, do you see a light at the end of the tunnel?
So I'm an optimist. So let me start with that aura of optimism to say, yes, wherever people are able or willing to discuss a problem, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. However, with reality is that this is not the first, like we've pointed out, that we've had. Perhaps the intensity, the degree, people are being pushed, and so there is that need for action. So we're reaching that stage. So my hope is that we've reached that stage where everybody that has a responsibility now wakes up and say, this is time to act. And so that is where the hope is, that it is that time, we have reached that time, and everybody is coming together. There's that collective decision for collective action. So yes, based on that, there is hope. And I'm hopeful that this will have led us to that time that we'll have that conversation and therefore take that deliberate collective action.
Wing Commander, I like the point that you raised, the point that, well, maybe previous attempts, at finding solution to the Northwest security issues were probably done in silos. This probably is a major, platform for collective action to strategize. But if you recall that when the war against insurgency actually started, plans were also articulated, and I do recall that plan included the 4 R's, which would include rehabilitation, reintegration, restructuring, and the other R now that escaped my mind. So I'm asking, what do you think, would come out differently from these, 4 definitive R's?
So, everything is, there are stages, whether in the build-up to the conflict, and when it's de-escalation, up to the maybe rehabilitation, reintegration, and rebuilding the societies and so on. I dare say that we are not at that stage of either reintegrating, but perhaps maybe at piecemeal, or rehabilitation, because we are in active situation of conflict.
Okay.
People are being displaced. The attacks are going on as we speak. Or let me not say as we speak, but I mean quite recently and so on. So first of all, we have to reach a situation whereby there is dominance, kind of the conflict, the violence is brought to a level that people can now go back to their communities. for that rehabilitation to take place, for the reintegration to take place, and for the rebuilding of those communities to take place. So we are at a stage, yes, they cannot be taught, say, when we finish this, then we go this. They have to be collectively, but they have to be faced. Now we're talking at a stage that we look at what are the root causes of this. Whereas you're putting the means of violence, that is using means of violence, that's kinetic energy at the same time, to douse the effect of the banditry itself. That's the...
What do you mean by being still in the active situation? If you recall, I remember there was a time when we were told that, oh yes, we have won the war. But what we have not won was the peace of the people. So if you're telling us that we are still active, and there was also a time when some parts of the Northwest was practically under the territory of the terrorists. But that's not the case now.
So we have to dissect the theaters of operation here. Are we talking about the Northwest, Northeast? No, we're not talking about the Northeast. We're talking about the Northwest, where you find that, I mean, just about a week or so ago, you hear about these attacks. Now, I'm not saying that it's everywhere, or people, or there are, what do I call it? Like, unlike in the Northeast, whereby there was this active taking over of territory. Okay. A real insurgency taking place. That's people taking over. In the Northwest, what happens is that you have areas that are ungoverned spaces that are dominated by these bandits from where they attack. So, yes, there's the issue of clearing them and clearing those areas and dominating those areas with either government forces or activities, government activities, to ensure that they don't have the space to operate from. Now, while you do that, and that's what I'm talking about, the issue of while you're doing that, pushing them away, you are bringing back the people back to their normal life. That is kind of rehabilitating them. Now, trying to say people that have been dislocated or have been displaced are being reintegrated back into their community. But we're not talking about the bandits themselves, like what is happening in the Northeast, people surrendering, giving up, and saying that we have abandoned this act, or they have been captured or something, and there's this phase of de-radicalization and so on, and you want to reintegrate them into the community. We have not reached that stage because that's why I mean by the active. We're still trying to subdue those people to ensure that they either give up and say surrender, or they are compelled to do so by superior or firepower.
So we have only been able to achieve the 2 hours rather than the 4 for now.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress.
Okay.
Like I said, also we cannot say that we will, so yes, we'll do all of them, or they should all be done at the same time. But for me, the root causes are even more important, tackling the root causes.
Okay, we'll talk about tackling the root causes later. But let's go back to our Katsina studio where we have some of our guests already there. Let me reintroduce Dr. Yahuza Getso. He's the Security Intelligence and Investigation Expert, CEO, Director, Forest Criminality Intelligence Center for Security, Intelligence Research and Community-Driven Development, Abuja, Managing Director, Eagle. He wears many caps, actually, Claire. So once again, we want to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria. Can you hear us this time?
Loud and clear. Good morning once again.
So let me just kickstart from the question. Okay, we also gathered that Dr. Kabil Adamu, Security Risk Management Expert, is also in the studio. Dr. Adamu, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's start with Dr. Getso now. My colleague earlier asked a question that with the array of personalities at the summit, the ongoing summit, what are your expectations this time around?
Well, my expectation is 3. 1, revealing the fact that a number of conferences, reviews, summits and a number of researches have been conducted in respect to the subject matter, that is the peace and security in the Northwest. But this time around, the feedback we are getting from the 7 governors, or rather 8 governors, because you have the 7 governors from seven Northwestern states and the governor of Niger State present, is the fact that they are agreeing with some of the gaps and the challenges that we have had in this course of making a peaceful and secured Northwestern states. And they are accepting those mistakes as shortcomings, and they are redoubling their efforts in ensuring that peace and stability is a priority, and at the same time forgetting or working despite the political differences and other differences. So their commitment. And the third, I'm expecting a more proactive measure using more of non-kinetic strategy as a dominance in the discussions. Yes, of course, you cannot fight any insurgents or banditry without using the kinetic measure. However, the major opinion, the primary opinion of the participants, which involve both the governors from 7 Northwestern states and the governor of Niger State, as well as the security agencies, the security experts, as well as the other traditional and religious leaders and other opinion leaders, is the fact that there is need to employ a more strategic developmental activities that will serve as an instrument or as a tool to building a more cohesive and a more united and a more peaceful environment in the northwestern part of the country. So I expect implementation of those strategies that have been discussed yesterday, and I know the discussion will continue today, and I have seen the commitment from each and every speaker and the participants. So I believe that Northwestern state governors are going to work more harmoniously in order to deal with the subject matter and bring a result, expected result. I believe that, as I said, and I have been saying, and I will repeat myself, none of these guys that is not known, they are part of us. We know where they are, we know who they are, and we are going to work more closely with the security agencies and intelligence to mobilize and share intelligence and ensure that they are tracked and dealt with. And those who are ready among them to kind of load their arms and take the peace, I know the state governors, nobody will want everybody to be killed in Northwest. Because if you kill everybody, who are you going to govern? So there is commitment, there is passion, and there is a unity agenda being introduced by the governors, and I salute them and I commend them. Even those governors who send their deputy governors, the messages sent is clearly testimony of their commitment, passion, enthusiasm, determination towards dealing with subject matter.
All right, Dr. Getzel, thank you. Let's quickly bring in Dr. Kabir Adamu, who is also joining us from Katsina. Dr. Kabir Adamu, thank you. And I don't know if Dr. Kabir Adamu is with us. Okay. Dr. Adamu, thank you once again. And I know you listened very critically to the presentations at the opening yesterday. And from the speech of the president, which was read by the vice president, mention was made of the Pulaku Resettlement Initiative. As you know, just to quote, the resettlement initiative is one of the non-kinetic interventions rolled out by his administration, saying it is a timely solution to address some of the root causes of disputes and insecurity in the Northwest, which gives the impression that some of the root causes are already known. But from the speeches, do you think there's a clear understanding of what is fueling, the crisis in the Northwest?
Once again, yes, almost everyone that spoke brought either
a new perspective or reiterated an aspect of the challenges that is either known or that is about to be revealed, to the public, including the one you cited, the Pulaku initiative by the Vice President. He was very specific. It was the issue of banditry and its effect on life and livelihoods. And of course, the Pulaku initiative is meant to provide an avenue for solving that particular challenge. And I think that is the message that came from virtually everyone within the public that made his or her contribution. Let's not forget that there are international non-governmental organizations that are also involved. The UNDP is a critical component that played a part both in the organization and then, of course, in the opening remarks yesterday. And they also highlighted, and I think for me this is really critical, the link between security and development. In other words, what is the objective of security? Why do governments even go ahead to provide security? It is to improve the life and livelihoods of the people, to protect their lives and allow them to achieve their various objectives. So this was the message that came out clearly from virtually every speaker, from the host government to the other state governors, to the international non-governmental organizations, of course to the ministers that participated, and the highlight of the event, the speech, was that by the Vice President that you mentioned. And just to give it context, I think it's very important that we understand the criticality of the situation in the Northwest. Of the 7 states in the Northwest together, their contribution to the insecurity challenge in the country is about 29%. And so, as an example, almost about 300 persons get killed every month from this region. If you look at the total average of about 1,000 plus that are killed in Nigeria as a whole. And then for kidnapping, almost about 40% of the persons that are kidnapped in Nigeria are kidnapped from the region. And so if the region, of course the theme of the conference is regional cooperation to protect lives and livelihood. So if the region comes together and the 7 states, together with Niger State, cooperate together and are able to reduce this 29% and 49% and bring it down to maybe 10%, it means the number of persons that are being killed or that are being abducted in Nigeria would reduce significantly. And one other important thing is, because most of the governors in the region, actually all of them are new, they've just been about 1 year, I think, in office. So the significance of this cooperation that is being envisaged among them, where we would now see, instead of the silo approach, where each state is approaching its security challenges on its own, we'll now see a regional cooperation to address not just the root causes, but the current security challenges that they are affecting. Katsina State has set up its vigilante group. Zamfara State has done that. Sokoto, Kaduna too, to an extent. So this forum, hopefully, at the end of it, we would expect, and this is my personal expectation, that a framework would be developed from the proceedings of the conference. The UNDP has a lot of experience. It supported the Northeast framework for peace building and addressing the security challenge. So we're hoping that at the end of this conference, something similar to that would emerge from this region that would allow all the stakeholders that have been mentioned by previous speakers to now key in, including the federal government, so that we will now see an implementation plan with clear guidelines that would allow you as media and us as private security practitioners to monitor the implementation of the framework that will come out from this discussion. So I'm quite optimistic actually.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Kabil Adamu. There, we are all very optimistic that peace will return to that zone and entirely, of course, the whole of Nigeria. Thank you. There, you've given us a brief of what is happening there. The objective of the summit actually is just to ensure that the lives and security of the people are protected and people can go about their daily activities. Before now, okay, let me just acknowledge the fact that we also have Dr. Nasil Muazu Damusa, Commissioner, Internal Security and Home Affairs, Kaduna State, also part of the discussion. You're welcome. Good morning.
Sure.
So, okay, let me just direct this question to you. We have listened to Dr. Kabil and also Dr. Getso, and they spoke about the new, strategies that are being that are evolving right now. But if you remember, the escalations of insecurity has seen Nigerian communities evolve strategies in the past to protect their neighborhoods, and these strategies, the new strategies that are evolving right now, what exactly is different, and what exactly was the issue in the past that those strategies could not be effectively implemented? What are we going to see differently this time around?
First of all, let me make it very clear that whatever is coming out of the communities are largely the effort of the leadership, because over the last few months, these governors in the Northwest have demonstrated their resolve to fight this insecurity in their respective states. So this led to development of so many approaches. And the first one that we have just talked about is the community approach, whereby people are galvanized at the local level to take action and protect their lives and properties. So let me give you example here in Katsina, where community-based approach is yielding positive results. That Katsina, we have what we call three-tier security structure, which has now been enhanced to four-tier security structure, where all the stakeholders in the state, the security stakeholders in the state, the local government stakeholders, the district stakeholders and community stakeholders are, coordinated to get to the down to the grassroots, to make people to appreciate and understand the need for them to come together to fight this menace of banditry and other criminality in their respective communities. And this will continue to go in as much as that government is ready and is supporting the move. And we are getting positive results. And this applies to other also states. Zamfara, Sokoto, Kebbi, Kaduna are also making the similar effort in order to bring in the communities to participate in this, in protecting their lives and properties. More so, you see, most of the tactics of the bandits in recent times shows that they are attacking hard-to-reach communities, whereby before the enforcement, before any deployment is made, they must have taken advantage of, our rural development crisis, whereby it's very difficult to access these communities. So people in the communities are trained and assisted on the way to go and protect their communities, and this is yielding positive results.
All right, Honorable Commissioner, I'd still like to stay with you, Dr. Dan Musa. A number of people, security analysts have really analyzed, the dynamics of the conflicts, and of course the dynamics propelling the conflicts in the Northwest may be quite different from what is happening in the Northeast and other parts of the country. But basically, activities of bandits, cattle rustling, ethnic and communal crisis, poverty. There's also proliferation of small arms and light weapons. All of these are common, drivers of conflict in almost the northern part of the country. But specifically to Katsina State, Katsina State has a large expanse of ungoverned space, and one of the issues security experts have talked about is the weak governance structure, and of course the inability of government to really take possession of these ungoverned spaces and protect the people and ensure that bandits do not take over those ungoverned spaces and attack innocent people. So how is Katsina State going to take advantage of the outcome of this summit?
Honestly, the summit, the ideas and argument put forward during the summit will be something that the state government will look at. But even at that, when we look at it, we are also trying to regenerate those institutions and structures so that we can be able to, move forward and address this problem of insecurity. And as I told you of initio, that the government of Katsina State, the governor has sufficiently demonstrated his resolve to fight insecurity in all its ramifications. For example, now since we can understand that there is, the security personnel in the state seems to be quite inadequate to address most of these issues now. So government decided to come up with this community watch code, which the 8 frontline local governments, Jibia, Basari, Safana, Dan Musa, Kankara, Faskari, Dandume, and Savua. These are what called the frontline local governments. So because they are, where they are bordering the forest, we feel the need to have some locally oriented personnel that will assist the other security agencies in fighting against these banditry. Now, this is how government is trying to reinforce the security structure and beef up the security asset in these respective local governments. And also, by definition, there are other local governments that we call vulnerable local governments, which include Dusama, Kurfi, Musa, Matazu, Malumfashi, Kenkia, Denja, Kafur, Futua. All these are local governments that are just bordering most of these frontline local governments. So bandit takes advantage of, coming in the night and perpetuate the heinous crimes. So also these local governments are giving certain some security assets, and so that at least they will protect their lives and properties. So these are the ways that government is trying to, beef up security assets to make the structure stronger to fight against this insecurity in these communities and LGS.
But it would appear that, the existing structures that, the state government had put in place isn't working, because a lot of people have told me that they no longer stay in their localities. They now troop to the city, Katsina. That's where they stay with their families. They have even moved. There is now what you call the rural-urban, movement in Katsina, and that's because the state government has not been able to, take control of those vast areas. Now there's an instruction that there should be new offensive. And this is not just an instruction to the military. It also new offensive in terms of what the state government is able to do. So what are there new offensives, that the state government is hoping to deploy so that people will begin to go back, to their respective villages and homes?
To be honest with you, before coming of this administration, 23 local governments were consumed by this issue of insecurity. But with regeneration of these security structures that you just mentioned, now we have succeeded in extricating 13 local governments from the shackles of the bandits. In the last 8 months or 9 months, we have not had any attack in Kenkia, Bindawa, Ingawa, Cherenchi, Batagarawa, Katsina, and also even some part of Dusama local government. So also we have not had any attack in Danja and even some part of Afuntua local government. And those who have left their families and their homes are now going back to their communities. So to tell you, even the frontline local government that I mentioned, we have not been experienced any attacks in their local government headquarters. Like in the last 7 to 8 months, we have not had any attack in Jibia either or Sapana, local government headquarters, or Musa, or Faskari, or Kankara, or Sabwa, or Ndube. So this goes to show you that government is, the effort of government is yielding results. And notwithstanding, as I told you, even those local governments now, we are planning to create another community watch co in another 8 vulnerable local governments to make it out to 60 local governments. Because we as I told you, we realize that all hands must be on deck, and security agencies that operate on the state are not sufficient enough to cover almost all these local governments. Let me give you for example. There is a local government that is a vulnerable local government, and they have been having attacks. When we discovered that they have only 36 police officers and 9 guns, AK-47. How can you address this? How can you, challenge bandits that are coming in numbers? You see, so you just have to have another, alternative security outfit that will augment the existing one you have. So all these efforts that we are making are honestly and sincerely having positive outcomes. People of Katsina State are witness to this effort that the government is making.
All right, thank you. I don't know if your data on Faskari incident is correct, because most times we hear, attacks, Faskari, Jibia, and all that. But Demola, you have questions for him.
Okay, I just want to direct my question once again to Dr. Getso. When you talked about strategies that are evolving, I want to talk about this issue of community policing and modern technology, because from what Dr. Muazu said, that at the summit, they are trying to get the involvement of the local people, in policing, in the issue of security now. The summit, have you been able to discuss the issue of community policing and modern technology? Where are we, when we talk about it, and what steps are being taken, to discuss more, and will they support this issue of community policing?
Well, the answer is yes. I want to make a short rider before I respond to your question directly in respect to the issue of responses of the government from as mentioned by the Commissioner. I want to tell you that I want to affirm to you and to the community and to the public, Nigerian citizens and everybody that is viewing us or will view us at a later time, that Katsina State government did not employ those community watch co at the state level. All those community watch co were recruited from their respective communities and using a community-driven strategy. So there is ownership at the community. Yes, of course, they may not be adequate, they may not be sufficient to manage the situation. And like mentioned by the Commissioner, the coward criminals are now taking advantage of hard-to-reach and difficult terrain. And this difficult terrain and hard to reach, there is an improvement in terms of information and intelligence generation, whereby, like you mentioned, you asked in your question, the use of technology. Yes, of course, technology has demonstrated efficiency and improvement in terms of what Katsina State government is utilizing by sensitizing the youth at various levels. I want to tell you that even yesterday night, there was an attack in one of the communities. But immediately, I myself, I saw it on the Twitter, and I saw it on the Facebook, and somebody quickly also sent an SMS to me. And this SMS, I know it is not only sent to me, it was sent to the Commissioner, and it was sent to many other people, and many other security agencies also have a coordinating mechanism where they are using the modern technology in extracting this information in Katsina State. So there is that uniqueness as far as operations is concerned. And this is also applicable to Zamfara. It's also applicable to Sokoto, because about 3-4 weeks I was in Sokoto and there was attack in one of the communities. And before the community passed the information to the security, I saw the information on the Twitter from one of the people, indigents of Sokoto. So I think the modern technology, the governors of Northwestern states are doing very well, and they are doing really huge in terms of sensitizing and advocating for each and everyone to be to come together and put our heads together to fight this menace. And I believe so much that with what we have on ground, and there was a lot of encouragement, a lot of media engagement, a lot of sensitization, and a lot of clarion calls being made by the Sultan, the other emirs from the region. I believe so much, and also the sermon being made by the scholars at the churches and the mosques, and everybody is now concerned. So, which means the level of ownership, the level of community engagement, the level of community mobilization, the level of building the community confidence and trust is becoming more and more. And it has been made very clear. Look at the example cited by the Honorable Commissioner that the total number in one of the vulnerable, most violent local government, total number of the police, both of armed and men and officers. How can you have that and expect, the community are being encouraged to come out in mass to participate. We are not saying that the community are advocating for community to own arms and other things, but rather those modern technologies are very, very important. Using the Twitter, using the Facebook, using the Instagram, using the all other means in order to pass the information to the relevant agencies. And those community watch corps, they are always moving around. Yes, of course, it is agreed and everybody believes, and even Commissioner affirmed it, even the state government are doing their best and they are redoubling. And they are going to recruit more, and we are advocating for all the states to reflect the strategy being initiated and implemented by Zamfara as well as Katsina State. And I believe that from the interactions that we are having, all the participants and everybody is echoing that word of coming together, working together, improving collaboration, improving partnership. We believe that even though the diplomats, some of the ambassadors are present, and some of the other diplomats, as well as the United Nations Development Agency, as well as the representative of the Secretary of the United Nations, but whatever they will bring as a mitigation, the best mitigation is the ownership of the situation by the people of the northwestern part of the country, by the governors of the northwestern part of the country, by the tradition. Let's improve in terms of commitment and implementing those ideas that have been galvanized before and what will be galvanized during this summit, and other opinions that will come from other scholars. And we believe so much that many other scholars have heard or are hearing what we are discussing here. And we believe sincerely that many others will also write their recommendations and proposals to the state governments in providing their own other solutions, their own opinion. We didn't believe that everybody that is here will have the solution. But the doors of the governors, they have made it very clear that our doors is open and we are ready to work with whosoever is ready. And I believe that the coward criminals are no longer operating. I know the forest. I know everywhere in the part of the forest. And I want to tell you, and I want to tell the public, that the coward criminals are no more at the nearby communities. They are at far difficult terrain and hard to reach communities. And
Dr. Gesso, thank you. And I'm glad you said you know the forest very well. And I'm also glad that you are part of this conference. So your valuable contribution, your contribution will be very, very valuable. But you see, we've all talked about different solutions. Demola asked about, community policing. The commissioner talked about the, framework that the state government is implementing, vigilante and all that. Even Dr. Kabiru also, mentioned some. But I just want to bring Wing Commander Salmanu into the conversation. And that talks about understanding the dynamics of what is driving the conflict in the Northwest. Unlike the North Central, for instance, where you have a very complicated, issue, is it that intricate to extrapolate a unified strategy to address the Northwest security crisis?
Well, the simple answer is no. It's supposed not to be difficult because to a large extent, like you've heard all speakers, speaker after speaker, and I'm sure even in the conference and elsewhere, the issues are known. They have been identified over and through researches and physically. You travel from here to the northwest, you see it physically on the ground that there is problem. As far back as 5-10 years or even earlier, when you go on the streets of Kaduna, where I come from, you know that we are going to walk into a problem very sooner or later. Okay. Because of the children you see then, 5, 6, 10 years on the street, out of school, begging, and so on and so forth. You ask yourself the simple question, where will these guys be in the next 10 years? When they will be 15, 16, 20, what would they be doing? So if you look at maybe the industries and so on, in the northwestern region, farming, that used to be the major preoccupation and so on. So the incidence of poverty is there, but it's also increasing every day.
Yes, and it's becoming institutionalized because it's not just Northwest.
Yes, but you know, so the solutions have to spring from what the problems are. I know those are long term, but you have to start the long terms right from today. What I expect from maybe the conference is that what are those real term or issues that will look about the issue of addressing poverty. Yes, you know, issue of agriculture, getting people involved, industrialization, getting people to work, back to earning a means of livelihood. If we address some of this, getting children back to school and so on and so forth, which are really issues of governance. So until, it's good that the governors are coming together, but all the policies should also look at how do we address those social issues, how do we address those issues that have been there right from now, and so that we, while solving the immediate problems of the violent conflict, since it has written there, how do we ensure that we cut off and the future is not, it's being repeated day in, day out. So for me, the hope is there, but we have to really go back and look at the issues of governance, good governance, as we all say. We had the CDS the other day talking about the military alone, or physical security, or in terms of militarizing. And we have this issue of, we have militarized every response. When we're talking about response to issues of security, a lot of the time, and including up to the local level, what we're looking at is means of violence. That's arms, ammunition, and so on. Yes, that has its place, but beyond and after that, we have to address the issues of insecurity, injustice, political exclusion, and so on and so forth. Until those are addressed.
You know, I like the points that you raised, and they're very, very germane. Wing Commander Salmanu, thank you. I would like Dr. Kabiru Adamu to respond to these issues as well. But Dr. Kabiru Adamu, I'll just keep you on hold and allow you to, you know, put together your thoughts on the issue. When we come back from the break, we'll come back to you in Katsina.
The federal government of Nigeria warns vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers on Top Go TV. Love it.
All right, welcome back. And you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Quickly, let me bring in Dr. Kabiru Adamu to the conversation, and he is speaking with us from Katsina. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, I'm wondering if you heard my question to Wing Commander Salmanu.
Kindly remind me. Remind me.
Unlike other parts of the country, and I mentioned specifically North Central, where the crisis may be a bit complicated, you know, and then it's taken some time to be able to come out with, you know, issues to address those issues. The issue in the Northwest is not as complicated, and I'm wondering why it's taken time and it's becoming difficult to really find a solution. And I said, if you're going to Katsina, for instance, a lot of people don't stay at home in their villages. They return back to the city center. And we hear there are a lot of people who are just being picked up on daily basis, and these are not reported in their villages, you know, because of the vast expanse of ungoverned space. So I'm wondering, why is the Northwest issue that intricate to decipher?
You're right, Claire. Like I mentioned in my opening remarks, there is no region in the country at the moment where insecurity is ravaging like the Northwest. When we did in Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, we did our monthly report for May 2024. 6 of the local governments that were the highest local governments that were affected by both fatalities and abductions were in the northwest of the country. In the past, it used to be northeast, but gradually we're seeing a shift to the northwest of the country. So the challenges are germane. They are issues that need to be dealt with. And interestingly, which ties into your question, the northwest is essentially homogeneous. Essentially, both in terms of its religious profile and then to an extent, even its ethnic profile. Essentially, of course, there are Christians, but predominantly the majority of the population in the Northwest are Muslims. So it would appear to the ordinary observer that because of this homogeneity, it will be very easy for unity of purpose and then for joint action, collaboration to address the security challenges. But so much has happened in the past that has led us to where we are. As an example, the collapse of the justice system, both the traditional justice system and then the more conventional justice system. For each of the security challenges, whether it's banditry or it's farmer-herder violence or it's kidnap for ransom, the failure of the justice system, both forms of justice system, to address the early signals, the early indicators of those security challenges have led to the monster that we are at the moment. Second point is climate change and its consequences, desertification in particular, and then several other components that are associated with climate change and the inability of, unfortunately, both levels of government, federal, state, and to an extent local government, to introduce adaptation measures to reduce the consequences of those climate change. I mean, I can pick all the security challenges and try to relate it to how climate change has exacerbated the challenge, but time will not allow me to do that. Third point is the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. All the security challenges, again, I can pick them one after the other and show you the positive correlation between those security challenges and then the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Now, associated with that is the porosity of our borders, especially in the Northwest. For almost all the states in the Northwest, almost all of them actually have borderlines with neighboring countries. And sadly, like it was revealed yesterday by one of the speakers, most of the formal border points as well as informal border points in the northern part of the country are not protected. So there is free flow of both material, transhumans, and humans across the border into those states that are contributing to those security challenges. Drug proliferation and addiction is also another challenge. The collapse of the value system, that is also very unfortunately prominent. And in that regard, the family system, there is a cultural, I would say, deficiency in the Northwest that unfortunately in some cultural communities within the Northwest where the family system is collapsing increasingly. The father wakes up in the morning, does not care how his kids feed, and goes out and leaves the mother in most instances to feed. And then the other side of this is the effect that the security challenge is having on families. Fathers have been killed. In some instances, mothers have also been killed. Orphans are there. Nobody is tendering to them. The state government are doing their lot. But it was revealed yesterday that the number of IDPs, displaced persons, in Nigeria, not the ones that have become refugees in Niger and other parts of the West African sub-region, are about 600,000. And this is, I think, the most conservative estimate. In my opinion, there are even more than that. So these are some of the reasons why the Northwest has been unable to address its security challenges. So of course, there are others, including the disharmonious approaches by the various state governments. Not too long ago, I'm not talking of the current crop of governors, but before them, some governors attempted to placate, I'm using this word loosely, the bad guys, the bandits, the kidnappers, the organized criminals, offered amnesty to them. In fact, some of them even went ahead into the forest, took pictures with them, and it was a massive failure. Why was it a failure? The DDRR program that we know, every security expert will tell you, is an institutionalized process. And I'm very happy it came up during the discussion yesterday. For governors to engage in it, they have to follow that institutionalized process. And it's interesting, and that's why I mentioned that I'm very delighted that the UN is part of this summit, because that program is largely driven by the UN. And if the governors decide that that is the route they want to take, I'm hoping that the UN will also support them in that regard. They can't just go into it without following the various processes that would allow for success. So now that this new crop of governors have agreed to work together and collaborate among themselves, we are hoping, like I said at the beginning, that a framework will come out that will now allow each and every one of them to key into, driven by the federal government. Let's not forget that as at today, security still remains within the exclusive list. So the federal government is taking the front. And again, like you cited in your earlier remarks, the Vice President was there. He confirmed the commitment of the federal government to support whatever initiative comes out of it. The representative of the National Security Advisor was there as the coordinator of security within the current security architecture. Of course, the military, the armed forces of Nigeria was represented. The NIA DG was there. The representative of the DGSSS was there. So I'm quite optimistic that at the end of this, if that framework comes out, all of these challenges that I've identified, which have come up during the conversations and will come up today, would, in the framework that will come out, solutions to them will be identified. I would close by saying that we need to disaggregate the security challenges. They are varied. When you are talking of banditry and talking of farmer-herder violence, they are very different. And if you do not approach it like that, with each and everyone having its own solution in a framework that brings everybody together, especially the community buy-in that has been discussed earlier by some of the conversations, then sadly, we will not address this challenge. But I'm quite happy that this is what is being done.
Dr. Kabir, you kept on talking about the involvement of the UNDP. We do understand that the UNDP, of course, is concerned with development issues. But can you give us a clearer picture of the context that UNDP is involved in this summit, particularly this Northwest Summit?
So, my participation as an example, it was facilitated by the UNDP. A lot of us actually, they recognized the expert role we play, and they invited us, and they've given us the voice to contribute to the development. I also know that they are partly funding the conference. I also know that the German government, the Netherlands, and several other European partners are also participating in it. So even though I agree totally that this must be homegrown, it must be led by us, we must take charge and control. And by that I mean the Northwest. I am from the Northwest, so I speak we as Northwest. We must take charge. But our development partners have a lot of technical expertise. They've learned from their mistakes in the Northeast. Don't forget that the situation in the Northwest has been ongoing for more than a decade. They've been involved. They facilitated the development of the security and peace-building framework that we have in the Northeast. So the mistakes that were made there, and already I think discussion is going on in that regard to ensure that there is an avoidance of a repetition of some of the mistakes that were learned in the Northeast. But at the end of the day, the technical expertise that they have and their ability to also identify, without any interest, stakeholders that can contribute in a meaningful manner to the discussions, I think is something that needs to be commended. But I would like to emphasize that we should never allow an outsider to take charge. We should take charge. That's, I think, what the Northwest Governors Forum is also doing. But at the end of the day, I would like to see, again, I don't want this to be lost, that a framework must be developed at the end of this conference. And that framework should have clear implementation guidelines with key performance indicators for each of the challenges that have been identified, so that you as the media, fourth estate of the realm, and then organizations like mine would now monitor the development and remind both the UN and the governors repeatedly that this is a commitment you made. You spent money in organizing this conference, you made a commitment, and these are the timelines that you provided. Where are we in terms of the implementation of that timeline?
Thank you very much, Dr. Kabir Adamu, for your contribution there. You have raised a lot of issues, and that you submitted that a framework must be developed to ensure that there is proper implementation of all the resolutions. Okay, let me now bring in Dr. Nasiru Muazu Adamu, who is the Commissioner, Internal Security, Home Affairs in Katsina State. I want you to speak to some of the issues raised by the wing commander here, especially the issue that the social issues addressing the poverty situation and out of school children. Because if we are talking about addressing the immediate causes now, the immediate problem, what about the future problems? So he's looking at it from that angle. What is the state government doing? Also, I also want to find out, can the global expertise resources bring to bear in fighting insecurity in the region with the involvement of the UNDPs?
Almost 95% of them were born and raised in those localities. Many people, their parents are known, their brothers are known, and they are known. And you don't have anybody coming from any other part of the country. They are born and raised there, and you can see them walking around. Now, it's just a matter of what Dr. Kabir said, that there is a need for us to segregate between the bandits, the informers, and the collaborators. You see, and they are all living in their various communities. So if we segregate, we know who are the bandits, and we develop a strategy to address their problems, to deal with them. And we know who are the informers who are facilitating the activities of these bandits. Because in as much as we continue to give it the same approach, they will treat an armed robber, or they will treat a drug baron, or they will treat other criminals, we are going to continue to have complication and confusion in handling these problems. So let me give, for instance, most of these bandits are not, their activities are not driven by poverty, as many people will assume. Most of them are rich, they have so many heads of cows, and they are, living, they farm, they do everything in their own communities. So, and also some of the informers, even recently, some of the informers some of them are even, have their various businesses. So it's not easy for us to start looking at, you see, why this, committing crime is, some sort of mind that if one want to avert crime or want to commit crime, it's not only the poverty that drive people into this criminality. So what we are saying in essence is this: in as much as these people were born and raised in these communities, we know them, so there is a need for us to have a community-driven approach in order to tackle the problem. That is one side. On the issue of socio-economic development, you see, generally, this part of the country need, coherent, committed, and as well as consistent developmental, programs that will address the poverty of all the most of the people in these areas. So it's not only left to issue of this banditry, because most of these bandits, if you know the kind of wealth they possess, you'll be surprised. So it's not the issue, but in fact, they are used to stealing. They are used to stealing. So it's not the issue of that they don't have, means of livelihoods. The only thing that needs to be, more we should gear our plan is to look at how we educate them. But in terms of, other economic, most of them don't need it. So let us understand the problem first. who is the bandit, who is a bandit, who is an informer, who is a collaborator, because it's a gamut of a big industry. It's a big industry where many people are involved. So if we do not segregate, the problem, we will continue to have, a confused approach in addressing the problem.
You say that poverty is not a major driver, for the bandits, but it is for some other people who, for instance, thrive in proliferation of small arms and light weapons. These are people who, young men and probably women, who are looking for source of livelihood. And indeed, the vice president mentioned that, or the president, when he read out, his speech, he said, we must reverse the institutional frailties, that's institutional weaknesses governing security, economic dysfunctions that create vulnerabilities to crime. I like you to take note of that. And he says we must also counter the ideological mischief that has pervaded the discourse of peace and security in the region, which is the Northwest region. So all of these are factors that are driving the Northwest crisis. So is it possible to say it is not poverty? I mean, how are you going to leverage the wisdom in the speech of the president?
It's not that poverty is not playing a role in criminality. It's not that. But what I said is, if we are trying to address this problem, we have to look at it holistically. It's not the only bandits that have poverty, but what I'm saying, most of them are not poor. But rather the community, if we are looking at the society, let us have a holistic approach whereby we address the poverty to all, not only the bandit. Banditry is not driven by poverty. That's what I mean. Most of them are rich and are children of rich, Fulani or Arpo in their various communities.
President, through the vice president, said, talking about economic dysfunction and most importantly, ideological mischief. And the ideological mischief could be in terms of, party divides, in terms of religious divides and all that. That is, according to him, pervading, the issue of the discourse of peace and security. Don't you think that it's a major issue as well?
It is, but I'm being specific on bandits that we know that are operating in this part of the region. Most of them, they are thieves, they are criminals, so there is no excuse that because they are poor, that is why they are stealing. This was my argument. But if we are taking the statistic that yes, Northwest is part of the region that need to be empowered because of the level of poverty, I will agree with you. That's my argument.
Sorry, Honorable Commissioner, it's like you didn't get my question. I am not contesting, what you have said. I'm just saying, how are you going to take advantage of, what Mr. President, the advice coming from Mr. President in terms of addressing the issue of ideological differences and institutional weaknesses that govern the issue of security? That's what I'm just asking. If you could just respond in just 60 seconds so that Wing Commander here can also make his contribution before we round off.
You wrote about the ideological issues, you wrote about the institution. And we have discussed about the institution, that if you look at the security and institution, the police, the army, the DSS, that would even profile the issue of this community watch code in order to augment. We are trying to regenerate the institution to make it work. But in terms of ideology, what ideology are you talking about? What is the problem? It's not ideology. There is no, we are all Muslim, 99.9% of us are Muslims. We have common culture, we have common background. So what ideological differences do we have? We don't have it. It's just a matter of, some people want to steal from others, so they decided to buy arms and they are attacking people just to make money from them. That is all. That is all.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Muazu Adamu. But before we leave that Katsina studio, let's bring in Dr. Getso now to give us, his own parting shots. At the end of the summit today, we know that the summit is rounding up today. Okay, Dr. Getso, yes. So let's have what are your expectations?
Well, my expectations is to have a work plan, a framework like mentioned by Dr. Kabiru and the Honorable Commissioner, and to have a team of a monitoring team that will follow up, and a tracker to identify who will do what, when, why, how, and where. And at the same time, to have a timeline frame for every activity as identified, and to also have a monitoring indicator to each, a kind of a linkage between the activity and the monitor as well as the tracker. And at the same time, to have a kind of continued review meeting by the governors, by the secretaries to the state governors and the security agencies, collaboration, more partnership improvement in terms of implementing and doing what, and also more community engagement in terms of information and intelligence generation, and also to have a way forward on how to deal with situation in those areas of hard to reach and difficult terrain. And at the same time, to have a reduction in terms of number of people being killed and number of people being kidnapped. And at the same time, to have more number of the criminals, the head of the kingpins, submitting and rendering their arms to government and taking the peace initiative. And more of non-kinetic strategy that will employ more strategical development focus through agriculture, social development, social justice, as well as many other things. So if we have this...
Dr. Getso, thank you. We are short of time. Our time has actually run out judiciously anyway. So thank you for your parting shots there. But before we finally leave, let's get your parting shot, Colonel.
Well, thank you.
Commander,
Yes.
Commander.
So for me, I hope it's a turning point, and the fact that the political will is being garnered now by all the political actors. Before, it's been everybody doing his own, but I hope now we've come to that point that we have determined that we have to do this together. That's the governors and all stakeholders in the Northwest. And I believe that once that is agreed upon, every other thing follows. So with the leadership of the governors, with the leadership of the political thoughts and the traditional institution coming together and agreeing on something, I think we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you very much, Wing Commander Musa Salmanu, retired Development, Peace and Security Experts. Thank you so much for your contribution today on Good Morning Nigeria. Also, we want to thank Dr. Yahuza Getso. Is the security intelligence and investigation expert. Actually, he wears many caps. Thank you so much, Dr. Getso, for your contribution. Also in the studio there, we have Dr. Nasiru Mohazu Damusa, who is the Commissioner, Internal Security and Home Affairs, Katsina State. Well, thank you so much for your contribution as well. And also our regular, Dr. Kabil Adamu, Security Risk Management. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your contribution. Thank you.
Well, every one of them seem to be in white.
They are in white as well. White is peace and, yeah.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Well, we have to go.
Yes.
And, that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. We thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I am Claire Adilabu Abdulrazak.
And I am Ademola Ade. Thanks for joining us.